Hey there, and thank you for choosing to watch this video. In a sea of content, you clicked on this one, and trust me, you're about to hear a story that's worth your time. At first glance, this might seem like just another tale about kindness. But what if I told you this is actually a masterclass in leadership, a lesson in using compassion as a power to renovate an entire business? What if the secret to true success isn't just about making money, but about how you make people feel? This is a story of Keanu Reeves, a man known not just for his talent, but for the way he treats others. A man who built a luxury brand not to exclude, but to welcome. A man who, when faced with failure, chose to lead with empathy instead of ego. So stick around till the end, because this isn't just a story, it's a mindset shift. It's proof that in the right hands, kindness isn't weakness, it's strategy. And before we dive in, a small act of kindness from you could make a huge difference for us. Hit that subscribe button, it's free, takes just a second, and helps us get closer to our first 1,000 subscribers. Because stories like these, they deserve to be heard. Now let's get started. Keanu Reeves sat in his study, the faint hum of New York nightlife filtering through the windows. His phone was in his hand, the screen glowing in the dim light. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just mindlessly scrolling through TikTok, his way of unwinding after a long day. He liked seeing what people were talking about, picking up on trends, reading comments. It kept him grounded. A video caught his eye. It wasn't viral, just sitting at around 40,000 views with about 100 comments. But something about the woman's expression, equal parts frustration and disappointment, made him pause before swiping past. Okay, I wasn't gonna post this, but I just had the most ridiculous experience, the woman said, adjusting the camera angle in her car. I went to this place, Eternal Luxe. You know that luxury store that just opened on 5th Avenue? The one with the insane launch party? Yeah, I thought I'd check it out, but turns out it's not for people like me. Keanu's eyebrows lifted slightly. The next part of the video made him think seriously. As the woman said in the video, "Look, I wasn't expecting them to roll out a red carpet, but I also wasn't expecting to feel like I didn't belong there. I walk in jeans, leather jacket, nothing fancy, but whatever, it's New York, nobody cares. Except, apparently, the staff at Eternal Luxe." She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Not a single person acknowledged me. I had to walk up to someone and ask about a watch, and I swear the guy barely looked at me before pushing me toward the more accessible section. I didn't even say my budget. And then, this is the best part, 2 minutes later this older dude in a suit walks in and suddenly it's all, 'Hello sir, would you like a glass of champagne while you browse?' Like, are you kidding me?" Keanu's grip on his phone tightened slightly. The comments weren't explosive, but they were consistent. Same thing happened to me. I went in with my boyfriend to look at rings and we got ignored. Guess Eternal Luxe is just another brand that only respects you if you look rich. His jaw tensed. He swiped away from TikTok and opened his sales reports. He already knew what he'd find, but seeing it in numbers made it worse. Sales were down 50% from projections. 2 months in, Eternal Luxe was supposed to be thriving. The location was prime, the launch event was huge, and yet, the numbers told a different story. Despite the perfect setting, people weren't coming back, and if this video was anything to go by, he had a pretty good idea why. He inhaled deeply, rubbing his chin. There was only one way to know for sure. The Eternal Luxe flagship store sat on a high-profile stretch of 5th Avenue, its exterior sleek and modern, the kind of place that radiated exclusivity. Inside, the space was immaculate, polished marble floors, precisely positioned lighting, subtle hints of expensive cologne in the air. Keanu stepped inside, dressed in his usual off-duty look. Worn leather jacket, faded jeans, scuffed boots, a baseball cap pulled low. To anyone watching, he looked like just another New Yorker ducking into a store out of curiosity. No one greeted him. He took his time, running his fingers over the edge of a silk tie, feeling the material. Nothing. A sales associate a few feet away glanced at him, then quickly turned her attention elsewhere. She had seen him. She had chosen to ignore him. Keanu moved toward the watches, pausing at an elegant display case showcasing limited edition pieces. He tapped the glass lightly, more than enough to get someone's attention. That's when Leonard Gray entered the picture. Leonard had the presence of a man who had spent his life in luxury retail. His gray suit was tailored a little too tightly, his slicked-back hair thinning at the edges, his expression a permanent mix of authority and mild disapproval. Keanu noticed something immediately. Leonard wasn't moving toward him. Instead, the manager was focused on another customer, an older man in a navy suit who had just walked in. The transformation was instant. Leonard's posture shifted, his expression brightened, his entire demeanor changed. He was engaged, attentive, the kind of service that should have been extended to anyone. Keanu turned back to the watches. He wasn't about to stand there like an idiot waiting to be noticed. He took the initiative. "Excuse me," he said, his voice even. Leonard turned, his smile polite but thin. "Yes, can I help you?" Keanu tapped the glass. "This one's interesting. What can you tell me about it?" Leonard stepped closer, his eyes flicking briefly over Keanu's boots before offering a carefully measured response. "That's one of our exclusive Swiss timepieces. Handcrafted, limited edition. An excellent investment." Keanu nodded. "And the price?" Leonard's smile didn't falter, but there was something in his eyes now, something that had nothing to do with professionalism. "That one is priced at $122,000. Keanu tilted his head slightly. "That's quite the investment." Leonard's fingers curled slightly behind his back. "We also have more accessible options." Keanu let the words sink in. He didn't react, didn't argue. He simply looked back down at the watch, then over to another section of the store. He walked toward a rack of finely tailored coats, reaching for a dark Italian wool overcoat. The craftsmanship was impeccable. He ran his fingers along the collar, feeling the smooth stitching. "This is beautiful," he said. "Could you tell me about it?" Leonard hesitated before stepping forward. "As part of our premium collection. Italian wool, handcrafted. It's priced at $2,500. Keanu nodded, still examining it. "It's well made." Leonard exhaled shortly. "You'll usually let just anyone handle these pieces." Keanu glanced up. "Just anyone?" Leonard's polite veneer cracked just slightly. "I'm sure you understand." Keanu held his gaze for a beat longer than necessary, then carefully placed the coat back on the rack. "Thanks for your time." Leonard gave a stiff nod and turned his attention elsewhere. Keanu walked toward the exit, stepping out into the crisp New York air. His heartbeat was steady, but his mind was already moving 10 steps ahead. This wasn't just one bad interaction. This was a culture problem. Tomorrow, Leonard would find out exactly who he had dismissed so easily, and things were going to change. Keanu stepped out of the Eternal Luxe store and into the cool night air. The scent of high-end cologne and polished marble still clung to him, but out here in the open city it felt distant. His breath curled into the evening sky as he zipped up his leather jacket, shoving his hands into his pockets. He didn't walk straight to his bike. Instead, he lingered on the sidewalk, watching people pass by, his mind already spiraling backward. This wasn't just about Leonard. It wasn't just about one bad manager making poor decisions. It was bigger than that. Keanu leaned against a street lamp, staring up at the Eternal Luxe logo gleaming above the entrance. A part of him still remembered the excitement, the pride he had felt when that sign had gone up just a few months ago. But now it looked hollow. The store was thriving in appearance, yet something beneath the surface was clearly rotting. And he was the one who had let it happen. He had built this brand with an idea in mind, an idea that now felt completely lost. Eternal Luxe wasn't supposed to be just another high-end boutique. It wasn't meant to be a cold, soulless status symbol where only those who looked the part were allowed to belong. He had never wanted that. If that was all he cared about, he could have just slapped his name on some luxury brand and called it a day. But that wasn't why he had started this. That wasn't why it mattered to him. Keanu closed his eyes briefly, letting his mind drift to the beginning. 2 years ago, the idea for Eternal Luxe had come to him in a way he never expected. He had been sitting in a tiny coffee shop in Paris, sipping on a cortado, flipping through an old magazine, when an article about luxury consumer experiences caught his eye. It talked about the psychology of exclusivity, how high-end brands created an aura that made customers feel like they had to prove their worth before they could even participate. Some people thrived in that kind of environment. Others were completely alienated. Keanu had sat there, reading through that article, and felt something twist in his gut. He had been one of those ordinary people before, He remembered what it was like to be just a struggling young actor, walking into a high-end store feeling like he didn't belong. He remembered wanting to buy something meaningful, something that made him feel like he had made it, like all the years of hard work were worth it. But instead of excitement, he had felt the weight of every judgmental glance, every condescending tone, every cold, calculating salesperson deciding whether he was worth their time. He had left empty-handed, not because he couldn't afford something, but because he wasn't willing to buy into that kind of experience. That was when it hit him. Luxury didn't have to feel like that. Luxury could be refined, sophisticated, but it could also be welcoming. It could guide people into understanding the artistry behind the products. It could help people feel like they were making an investment in something truly special, not just something expensive. That was the vision behind Eternal Luxe. A brand that wasn't just about price tags, but about storytelling. A place where people, no matter where they came from, could step inside and be guided, educated, respected. If someone walked in unsure of what they wanted, the staff should have been there to help them, not judge them. But that vision had never fully materialized, and now, standing outside his own store, Keanu realized why. He had made a mistake. It was him who let this situation happen. It wasn't that the agency he hired was incompetent. Far from it. They were one of the best in the business. They knew how to build a brand, craft an image, and create exclusivity. But they didn't know how to build the brand at its heart, the heart of the real Keanu Reeves. When Eternal Luxe had launched, Keanu had been on a tight filming schedule, shooting back-to-back projects. He had handed over the reins, letting the agency take full control. They handled the hiring, the training, and the day-to-day operations. On paper, everything looked perfect. The branding was immaculate, the marketing sleek, the grand opening an event to remember. But he hadn't been there. He hadn't been present to make sure the right culture was being built from the start. He had trusted that the agency would instill the values he wanted, but they had done what they did best, made Eternal Luxe look like a luxury brand. And that was the problem. It didn't matter how beautiful the storefront was. If the customer experience was broken, the brand was broken. And now he was seeing the consequences. Keanu exhaled sharply and pushed off the street lamp. Tomorrow, Leonard would find out exactly who he had dismissed so easily. But this wasn't just about Leonard. Firing one manager wouldn't fix the culture. It wouldn't suddenly make the employees understand what Eternal Luxe was supposed to be. Keanu needed to do more than just reprimand people. He needed to rebuild. He pulled out his phone, opening his contacts. His thumb hovered over a number, the agency he had worked with to launch the brand. No, not yet. Before he made that call, he needed to deal with the problem at its core, and that started with Leonard. Tomorrow, he wasn't just going to reveal who he was going to make sure Leonard understood exactly what Eternal Luxe was supposed to be. The next morning, Keanu Reeves arrived at the Eternal Luxe headquarters, a sleek, glass-paneled building overlooking the Manhattan skyline. He wasn't here for a routine check-in. He wasn't here as a passive investor. Today, he was here to fix his mistake. The corporate offices of Eternal Luxe reflected everything the brand projected: minimalist, refined, exclusive. But beneath the perfect aesthetics, Keanu knew there was a deep flaw in the foundation. He had seen it with his own eyes last night. He had felt it in the way Leonard dismissed him, in the way the staff had ignored him. This wasn't a customer service issue. This was a culture issue. His assistant, Lisa, greeted him the moment he stepped off the elevator. She was sharp, efficient, always prepared. "Leonard Gray just arrived. He thinks this is a routine performance review," she informed him in a hushed tone. Keanu gave a slight nod. "Good. Let's not correct that just yet." Lisa hesitated before speaking again. "I also pulled the full personnel reports from the last 2 months. Leonard has been managing the flagship store since day one. There have been complaints, but nothing major enough to reach corporate." She tapped the folder she was holding. "If you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't notice the pattern. But the truth is, repeat customers are low, and the demographic is narrow. The store isn't just underperforming, it's alienating people." Keanu exhaled slowly. "Then let's get to work." Leonard Gray stepped into the conference room, his polished dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. He was composed, professional, but Keanu could tell he wasn't expecting him. Leonard's eyes flickered with confusion for a split second before he masked it behind a polite smile. "Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize you'd be attending this meeting." Keanu leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Take a seat, Leonard." The store manager hesitated briefly before lowering himself into the leather chair across from Keanu. He still had no idea what this meeting was really about. Lisa placed a thick folder on the table, flipping it open to reveal a set of printed documents. Sales reports, customer feedback, employee evaluations. Keanu folded his hands on the table. Let's start with the numbers. The flagship store is performing at 50% of projected revenue. Foot traffic is high, but conversion rates are low. Repeat customers are even lower? Tell me, Leonard, why do you think that is? Leonard's shoulders squared as he adjusted his tie. Luxury retail is highly selective, Mr. Reeves. We cater to a specific clientele. It's not about volume, it's about maintaining the integrity of the brand. These numbers don't necessarily indicate failure, they indicate exclusivity. Keanu nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. Exclusivity. He let the words sit in the air for a moment. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward Leonard. The TikTok video played in front of them. Leonard's polite composure wavered. The woman in the video recounted her experience once more, how she had walked in, been ignored, then ushered toward the more accessible section without so much as a conversation. Keanu let the video finish before speaking. "This is one of the reasons why we're sitting here today. You recognize this complaint?" Leonard cleared his throat. There will always be customers who feel slighted in luxury retail. It's an aspirational market. Not everyone can participate in it. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "And you decide who can and who can't?" Leonard stiffened slightly. "We make informed judgments about our clientele. Our core demographic expects a certain experience. They don't want to shop in a place where just anyone can come in and browse like it's a department store." Keanu leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "And what exactly qualifies someone to be treated with respect?" Leonard opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no real answer to that. Keanu exhaled slowly, placing his phone back on the table. "I went into your store last night." Leonard's posture shifted. "I walked in, I browsed, I asked you about a watch, about a coat, and you, Leonard, you dismissed me." Silence hung thick in the room. Leonard's throat bobbed slightly. Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize." Keanu interjected, his voice controlled but edged with disappointment. "That's exactly the problem. You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with decency." Leonard's face had paled slightly. I thought I was protecting the brand's image." Keanu leaned back again, exhaling sharply. "No, you were protecting an illusion, and that illusion is costing us customers reputation and revenue." Leonard swallowed hard, but to his credit, he didn't start making excuses. He sat there, absorbing the weight of what Keanu was saying. Keanu let the silence settle before continuing. "I could fire you today." Leonard's fingers curled slightly against the edge of the table. "But I won't." The manager's eyes flicked up in surprise. Keanu's expression softened just slightly, but his tone remained steady. "Do you know why?" Leonard hesitated, then shook his head. Keanu tapped his fingers against the table. "Because I've been given second chances in my life, and I believe people can change, if they're willing to." For the first time, Leonard's expression cracked. There was something in his eyes, something Keanu recognized. The uncomfortable realization of failure. Keanu folded his arms. "I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking if you're willing to learn." Leonard swallowed hard before speaking. "What does that mean?" Keanu pushed a new folder across the table. Inside was a temporary reassignment order. "It means that for the next week, you won't be managing the store. You'll be working the floor as a regular sales associate. No name tag that says manager. No authority. Just you, interacting with customers the way your staff does every day." Leonard blinked. "You're demoting me?" Keanu shook his head. "No. I'm giving you a chance to see eternal Lux from a different perspective, to see the flaws you've been blind to." He met Leonard's gaze, his voice quieter now. "If you don't want to do it, I understand, but then this conversation is over, and so is your time with eternal Lux." Leonard sat there for a long moment. Keanu didn't rush him. He just watched, waiting. Finally, Leonard reached for the folder. He didn't look up when he spoke. "1 week?" "1 week," Keanu confirmed. Leonard nodded once, his jaw tight. "All right. Keanu leaned forward slightly. Then, let's see what you learned. Leonard Gray had spent years in luxury retail. He had been in high-end boutiques, managed VIP client portfolios, shaken hands with celebrities and CEOs, but he had never worked on the floor as just another salesperson. Now, standing in the middle of Eternal Luxe flagship store with a simple name tag clipped to his blazer, no manager title, no air of authority, he felt exposed. He had arrived early as he always did, but today no one had rushed to greet him. No one treated him like the one in charge. Instead, the assistant manager, Sophia Lane, handed him a shift schedule and a sales quota, just like every other employee. "You'll be working under my supervision," Sophia said, keeping her tone professional. She was younger than Leonard, sharp and ambitious, one of the few people in the company who had the guts to challenge his decisions. "Today, you're shadowing James. He'll walk you through the day-to-day operations." "Huh?" Leonard glanced over at James Walker, a young sales associate in his mid-20s, adjusting a row of cufflinks in a glass display case. James had only been with Eternal Luxe for 6 months. Leonard had barely spoken to him before. James turned and extended a hand. "Welcome to the floor, Leonard." Leonard hesitated before shaking it. The morning started slow. Leonard followed James around, watching him assist customers, restock inventory, and, most importantly, engage with people in a way Leonard never had. James treated every customer with the same level of attentiveness, whether they were in designer suits or casual hoodies. He asked genuine questions, not just transactional ones. A woman in a sundress walked in, stopping at the display of handbags. James greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning. Anything in particular catching your eye today?" She hesitated. "I'm looking for a gift, but I'm not sure what would be best." James nodded thoughtfully. "Who's it for?" "My sister. She's graduating from law school." "That's amazing. Congrats to her. Let's find something that celebrates that accomplishment." He gestured toward a section of sleek professional handbags. "How would you describe her style? Classic, modern, a little bold?" The woman visibly relaxed, engaging in conversation as James guided her through the selection. Leonard, standing nearby, realized something unsettling. He had never approached a customer like this. When he spoke to customers, it was about status, about reinforcing exclusivity, not creating a personal connection. The first real test came after lunch. A man walked in alone, dressed in dark jeans, sneakers, and a lightweight bomber jacket. He glanced around, his posture uncertain, before making his way toward the watches. Leonard instinctively tensed. If he had been in his usual position as store manager, he might not have sent anyone over right away. James, however, didn't hesitate. "Hey there, looking for something in particular today?" The man glanced up, clearly surprised to be approached so quickly. I was just looking. I'm kind of interested in watches, but I don't know much about them." "Then you came to the right place," James said easily. "What's the occasion? Treating yourself or looking for a gift?" "Treating myself," the man admitted. "I just got promoted." "Congrats, man, that's a big deal. A watch is a great way to mark the moment." James gestured to the display. "Let's check out some options that fit your style." Leonard observed the entire exchange, something uncomfortable settling in his chest. The old him would have approached this customer differently, if at all. He wouldn't have assumed the man was serious about buying. He would have let him browse in silence, maybe offered assistance only if asked. But as James guided the man through different models, explaining details without judgment, Leonard saw it clearly. This was what luxury service should be. It wasn't about making people prove they were worthy of shopping here. It was about making them feel worthy. By day 3, something strange happened. Leonard stopped thinking about this as a punishment. He started paying attention not just to how the staff interacted with customers, but to how the customers responded when they were treated with care. A young couple came in looking for an engagement ring, clearly nervous. Leonard instinctively started to repeat his usual script, but then he caught himself. James' voice echoed in his head. Instead of leading with numbers, he asked about their story. "How did you two meet?" The woman lit up. "Oh, we met in college, but we didn't start dating until years later." Leonard listened. He let them talk. And when he finally walked them through the rings, it wasn't about selling, it was about guiding. By the time they made their choice, the couple wasn't just happy, they were grateful. As they walked out, Leonard felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride, not in the sale, but in the experience he had given them. On his last day, Keanu Reeves showed up. He didn't come in to make a scene. He simply walked through the doors, looking around, observing, and for the first time, Leonard didn't see him as a billionaire, or a celebrity, or his boss. He saw him as a customer. Leonard walked over, standing next to Keanu near the leather goods. "Can I help you find something?" Keanu turned, studying him for a moment. Then, with a small smile, he said, "I think you already did." Leonard exhaled, something between relief and understanding settling in his chest. He hadn't just been given a lesson, he had been given a second chance, and this time, he wasn't going to waste it. Leonard sat in the Eternal Lux conference room, the same seat where just a week ago he had faced Keanu Reeves for the first time as his employer. That conversation had felt like a reckoning. This one felt like a crossroads. The last 7 days had reshaped everything he thought he knew about luxury retail. He had spent years believing that exclusivity meant putting distance between the brand and the customer, that prestige was something you had to prove yourself worthy of. But after working the floor, seeing people's reactions, guiding them instead of testing them, he knew now that he had been wrong. And now Keanu was sitting across from him, watching him with that same unreadable expression, waiting. Lisa, the assistant who had been quietly managing the reports, closed the folder in front of her. "Well, Leonard, you've completed your week on the floor. I assume you have thoughts." Leonard exhaled. "Yeah." Keanu leaned forward slightly. "Then let's hear them." Leonard ran a hand through his hair before settling his hands on the table. "I thought I understood luxury retail. I thought I was protecting the brand by keeping it exclusive. But what I was really doing was pushing people away." Keanu didn't say anything. He just waited. Leonard cleared his throat. "I saw it firsthand, the way James and Sophia interacted with customers, the way people responded when they felt welcomed instead of sized up. I saw it in that couple looking for an engagement ring, in the guy who just wanted a watch to celebrate a promotion. I saw it in the way people relaxed when they realized they didn't have to prove themselves just to shop with us." He shook his head. "I never thought about it like that before. I was so focused on the image of exclusivity that I forgot what makes people actually want to come back." Keanu studied him for a long moment, then finally spoke. "And what do you think that is?" Leonard met his gaze. "Trust." Keanu's lips pressed together slightly, the barest hint of a smile in his eyes. "Go on." Leonard exhaled. "People don't just spend money on a brand because it looks expensive. They invest in brands that make them feel something. We weren't giving them that. We were giving them walls instead of doors." Silence stretched between them for a few beats before Keanu finally spoke again. "So, what do we do about it?" Leonard straightened in his chair, his jaw tightening slightly. He had thought a lot about this, more than he had expected to. "First, we change how we train our staff. We don't just teach them about products, we teach them about people, how to read what a customer needs, not just financially, but emotionally." Lisa scribbled a note, "Customer experience coaching, I like it." Leonard nodded. "Second, we rethink how we present our products. Right now, we have salespeople. What we need are guides, people who make shopping at Eternal Lux an experience, not just a purchase." Keanu tilted his head slightly, considering this. "And you're saying this as someone who not long ago thought customers should prove they belonged here before we even helped them." Leonard swallowed. "Yeah." Keanu let out a short breath, shaking his head slightly. "Damn." Leonard frowned. "What?" Keanu leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "I didn't expect you to actually get it. I hoped, but I wasn't sure." Leonard huffed a quiet laugh. "Yeah, well, I didn't expect to either." Keanu stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked New York City. It had taken him years to build this company, but in some ways, he felt like he was only now starting over. He turned back to Leonard. "I can fire you today, you know that, right?" Leonard nodded once, bracing himself. "Yeah." "But I won't." Leonard blinked. "What?" Keanu sighed. "Because you actually learned something. And because if I fired you, I'd be making the same mistake I made when I let someone else run this place without guiding them first." Leonard stared at him, not quite believing what he was hearing. Keanu crossed his arms. "So, here's what's gonna happen. You're keeping your job, but you're not just going back to it like nothing happened. You're implementing everything you just said. You're leading this change. And if I come back in a few months and see that nothing's different, then, Leonard, we're done." Leonard let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I won't waste this." Keanu nodded. "Good, because the thing about second chances is, you only get one." Leonard extended his hand across the table. For the first time, it wasn't the handshake of a manager protecting his position. It was the handshake of someone who was finally ready to build something real. Keanu shook it, and just like that, Eternal Lux had a future. 3 months later, Eternal Lux felt like a different store. The marble floors still gleamed, the displays were still meticulously arranged, and the gold-lettered sign above the entrance still radiated luxury. But the energy inside, that had changed completely. Keanu Reeves stood near the entrance, dressed casually as always. Jeans, a worn leather jacket, his usual scuffed boots. This time, he wasn't undercover. He wasn't here to test his own store. He was here to see if the change he fought for had actually taken root. A couple walked in, holding hands, hesitating near the jewelry counter. Immediately, a sales associate greeted them, not with an impersonal sales pitch, but with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Eternal Lux. What brings you in today?" Keanu watched as the couple exchanged a glance before relaxing. They felt welcomed, that was the difference. He moved further inside, his eyes scanning the room. The store still carried an air of exclusivity, but it was no longer cold, no longer intimidating. It was elegant but inviting, and at the heart of it all, Leonard. Leonard Gray stood near the center of the store, speaking with a customer, his posture more relaxed than before, his voice lacking the clipped, judgmental edge it once carried. He wasn't just managing, he was engaging. Keanu walked up just as Leonard was finishing his conversation. The customer left, smiling, their purchase carefully bagged and tied with Eternal Lux's signature ribbon. Leonard turned, and for the first time, he wasn't nervous to see Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," he said, a hint of a smile in his voice, "checking in on your investment?" Keanu smirked. "Something like that. You tell me. Has it been worth it?" Leonard nodded, exhaling slowly. "Yeah, it has." He gestured toward the store around them. "We reworked the training process. Every new hire now goes through customer experience coaching. Not just product knowledge, but how to actually read what a customer needs, how to connect. We also shifted how we handle first-time visitors. Instead of waiting for them to prove they belong here, we guide them through the experience." Keanu glanced at the staff. They moved with confidence, not just precision. They weren't just selling, they were curating an experience. "And the numbers?" Keanu asked. Leonard smirked, knowing that this was the one thing Keanu cared about the least, but still, it mattered. Sales are up 27% from last quarter. Repeat customers have doubled, and the best part? The clientele is more diverse than ever. We're attracting people who actually love the brand, not just the status symbol. Keanu crossed his arms. "So, we saved Eternal Lux?" Leonard shook his head. "No, we built it the way it was always meant to be." They walked toward the watch section, where everything had started. Leonard glanced at a familiar piece, the $122,000 limited edition watch that Keanu had once inquired about. Leonard chuckled softly. "You know, I was half expecting you to come in today and actually buy this, just to mess with me." Keanu grinned. Would have been tempting." He tapped the glass, then looked at Leonard. "But the real win isn't in what I buy. It's in what you learned." Leonard exhaled, nodding. "Yeah, I get that now." Keanu turned back to the watch. "Still a damn nice piece, though." Leonard laughed. As Keanu made his way toward the exit, he stopped near the coat section, the same one where Leonard had once dismissed him. A young woman stood there now, examining a finely tailored wool coat. She hesitated, touching the fabric but not quite picking it up. A sales associate noticed and stepped forward, not hovering, not pressuring. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the associate said, voice warm. "Want to try it on?" The woman hesitated. I don't know if it's really for me." The associate smiled. "Let's find out." Keanu watched as the woman slipped into the coat, turning to the mirror, and in that moment, he saw it. That spark, that feeling of belonging. This was Eternal Lux, not just a brand, an experience. Leonard walked up beside Keanu, following his gaze. "So what now?" he asked. Keanu grinned, stepping toward the door. Now we do it again. In every store. Leonard chuckled. Ambitious? Keanu shrugged. Only if you don't believe it's possible. Leonard nodded. Then I guess we better get to work. Keanu clapped him on the back before walking out into the New York streets. The city buzzed around him, and for the first time in a long time, he knew that eternal lux was exactly where it needed to be. Because luxury wasn't about who you kept out, it was about who you welcomed in. If you've made it to this point, thank you. Not just for clicking on this video, but for sticking around till the end. That means this story resonated with you. Maybe even challenged the way you think about kindness, leadership, and the true meaning of success. What Keanu Reeves did wasn't just about fixing a brand, it was about redefining what power looks like in business. It's easy to lead with authority. It's much harder to lead with empathy, patience, and the belief that people can change. But that's exactly what makes the difference between a business that thrives and one that fades away. And if this story left you with something to think about, do one small act of kindness today. Hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but for us, it brings us one step closer to our first 1,000 subscribers. More subscribers mean more stories like this. Stories that prove kindness is more than just a virtue. It's a force that shapes the world. Again, thank you for watching, and remember, real luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about how we make others feel. See you in the next video.